Did you know that in the 1970s, every piece of Hostess Twinkies was flipped by hand to maintain its shape? Yeah, there were no fancy machines or AI-powered robots. Just a bunch of dedicated workers, nostalgic machines, and factories so loud you could hear them from a mile away. But if the production process was so old school, how did they manage to get it right every single time? Stick around to find out. It all starts with the batter. Contrary to what you think, making a Twinkie batter in the 1970s didn't start with touchscreen monitors or automated sensors. It began with a steel mixing vat that could swallow more than 300 pounds of flour in one go. But it wasn't just about dumping things in and hoping for the best. It was a process that relied heavily on the crew's instincts. The mixing room was loud, hot, and smelled like warm sugar and vanilla. You'd have workers in stained aprons lifting sacks of ingredients that weighed more than your kid's bicycle. The flour dust alone could cloud up the air, and yet nobody wore a mask unless it was for fun on Halloween. Sugar, eggs, water, shortening, and a special blend of vanilla flavoring were added in a very specific order. Mess that up, and you'd end up with something that's not snack cake batter. The mixers didn't run on pre-programmed cycles either. They were operated by heavy levers, big buttons, and someone's gut feeling. The hum of the machines would shift when the batter hit the perfect texture, and experienced operators knew exactly when to stop. And the eggs? I know you may think everything was pre-cracked and processed, but in those days, it was common to use large containers of fresh liquid eggs cracked in-house or delivered in bulk. Workers would dump these into the vats with enormous ladles or giant pouring buckets. Sometimes a piece of shell would sneak in, and they'd have to fish it out by hand. Yes, by hand. The end result was a thick, creamy golden batter that looked good enough to eat raw. And some workers did, if the boss wasn't looking. That's how it was in the old days. And speaking of going old school, subscribing to my channel right now means you'll be getting first-class tickets back to a time when factories were loud, greasy, and weirdly charming. So hit that subscribe button, and let's keep time traveling together. Filling the steel molds. Once that batter was mixed and ready, it got poured into long, narrow steel molds. But these weren't disposable. Workers would scrub and reuse them for years, sometimes until the edges wore down. These molds had a special shape that gave Twinkies their iconic look. But keeping them clean and usable was a daily grind. And after every shift, workers had to wash them out by hand or with high-pressure hoses. If even a little dried batter stuck around, the next cake would come out looking like a science experiment gone wrong. With everything clean, the molds were lined up on giant conveyor belts that ran through the factory like train tracks. Each tray had a dozen or so molds lined in a row, and workers had to act fast. The batter was ladled into each mold using heavy metal pitchers or hand-operated spouts. These spouts were built like something out of a garage workshop. And you needed strong arms and good aim to get it right. It wasn't as precise as you think. If someone had a shaky hand or was just having a rough morning, that Twinkie was gonna come out lopsided. Some even ended up too full and spilled over like lava. When that happened, the cleanup wasn't fun. Batter burnt into the edges of a conveyor, and the smell of scorched sugar stuck around like a bad roommate. Once filled, the molds made their slow journey into the massive industrial ovens. But these ovens weren't just big, they were monsters. Imagine a tunnel of fire powered by gas burners with roaring heat and flames licking the sides. These flames baked the cakes as they traveled through the oven on a moving belt, turning them from pale yellow into golden sponge cakes. But this was the 70s, so there were no digital timers. Instead, factory workers had stopwatches hanging from their necks and a sixth sense for spotting a perfectly baked sponge. They'd peek in through those fogged-up little glass windows and sniff the air. If it smelled right, it was done. But if it was burned, even by a minute, they'd know right away. Now, if this kind of behind-the-scenes stuff reminds you of your childhood snacks, go ahead and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your favorite Hostess memory. Cooling and turning by hand. Now, here comes the part nobody really talks about. After those hot Twinkies came out of the oven, they couldn't just sit there. Nope, they had to be flipped, one by one, and it was done by hand. Why? Because the bottoms would stay soggy if you didn't. So workers had to grab each steaming hot sponge cake, flip it over, and lay it gently on cooling racks. Gloves? Let's just say that workers from the 70s were built differently. They could handle the heat. Picture a long line of workers, each at a station with trays stacked high. As the cakes came out, they'd use metal spatulas or just their hands to flip each one onto its side or upside down to keep the shape nice and even. The smell at this stage was unreal. It was warm sponge cake straight out of a gas-fired oven, and everyone got used to going home smelling like vanilla. Cooling racks were these massive wheeled carts that looked like something you'd use to air dry laundry. They were made of metal, with layers of wire shelves spaced just far enough apart to let the warm air do its thing. There were fans in the room, but that was about it. No climate-controlled chambers, just open air and time. The cake sat there until they hit just the right temperature. Not too cold, or the filling would harden up weirdly. Not too hot, or it would just melt. Again, no sensors, no machines, just timing and experience. And yeah, it was hard work. You were on your feet all day, lifting trays, flipping cakes, and moving carts. But people had pride in it. Everyone had their own rhythm. Some were fast, some were careful, but everyone wanted those cakes to be perfect because they knew somebody out there was going to bite into one during a lunch break and smile. Cool, right? But if you're enjoying this nostalgic Twinkies factory tour, hit that like button so I'll be encouraged to bring you more. Injecting the filling. Okay, let's get into the part that really made the Twinkie famous, that legendary cream filling. You may think the whole thing was made in one shot, but it wasn't. Cakes were baked empty. Then they were filled. After cooling, the Twinkies rolled down another conveyor into the injection station. This part of the process was where things got really interesting and a little chaotic. The injection machine in the 1970s wasn't sleek or quiet. It was a hulking, clattering beast with exposed gears, noisy motors, and just enough attitude to make workers flinch every time it jammed. Each Twinkie was positioned on a track with military-level precision. Well, most of the time. Then came the moment of truth. 3 metal needles shot up from beneath and jabbed into the upper side of the sponge cake like it owed them money. 1 jab in the front, 1 in the middle, and 1 in the back. If the alignment was even slightly off, you'd get a cake with 1 cream pocket hanging out the side or nothing in the middle. It was kinda like playing dessert roulette. And what about the cream? Well, the base was actually the same kind your grandma used in her pie crusts, but it was blended with sugar and vanilla so powerfully that it fluffed into this thick, sweet, air-whipped cloud. Now, I wasn't there, but rumor has it that some old-school workers used the cream like hair gel on a dare. That's how dense it was. And no, it wasn't refrigerated. It sat in big stainless steel tanks, waiting to be pumped through rubber tubes into the injection guns. Of course, this filling system wasn't perfect. It jammed, it dripped, and sometimes it shot across the floor like an angry fire hose. Workers had to be ready to yank misfires off the line and either rerun them or, if the cake was too wrecked, toss it into the reject bin. And yes, you better believe someone always snuck a bite from that bin. Quality control, right? But why keep this information to yourself? Share this video with a friend so they'll see how much cooler snack factories were before everything went full robot. And if you're enjoying it, make sure to like and subscribe. Wrapping and boxing, all done by hand and eye. Now let's wrap this thing up, literally. Once the Twinkies got their cream injections, they had to be packed up fast. But they didn't use heat-sealed plastic like we have now. Instead, the 1970s wrapping machines used cellophane film, stretched and folded tightly around each cake. And they weren't airtight either, so the shelf life was way shorter. But the taste was way fresher. The cellophane came on massive rolls and was fed into machines that looked more like something out of a newspaper press than a snack factory. These machines had whirring rollers, snapping belts, and hot metal plates that folded the film like a magician doing a card trick. The film would wrap the Twinkie, crimp the ends, and twist them tight like a piece of candy. You could always tell a 70s Twinkie by those crinkle little tails on each end, kinda like the snack had ponytails. And oh, the sound! That crinkling cellophane was everywhere. The factory floor echoed with it. It was like being inside a popcorn machine on overdrive. Some workers said they could still hear it ringing in their ears at night. Kind of a badge of honor, if you ask me. Of course, wrapping machines from the 70s weren't perfect. They could mess up too. Sometimes the ends weren't sealed tight or the plastic tore halfway through the process. So you had workers standing at the end of the line with eagle eyes, pulling out any mangled wrap jobs before they hit the boxing station. Then came the boxing, which was done completely by hand. Workers grabbed fistfuls of wrapped Twinkies and packed them into cardboard display boxes. But these weren't huge shipping cartons. They were the kind you'd see sitting right by the cashier at a gas station, ready for someone to grab during a soda run. The boxes got stacked on rolling carts, then wheeled out to loading bays. From there, early morning drivers loaded them into vans or small trucks and drove off. And guess where they were heading to? Stock stores, schools, and as many vending machines across the city, just so you can enjoy that yummy bite that Hostess Twinkies had to offer. The journey was long and noisy, but every bite was worth the effort. So there you have it. That's exactly how Hostess Twinkies were made in the nostalgic 1970s factories. Now drop a comment below and tell us what snack factory should we go behind the scenes with next. And if you love how we took the time to dig deeper into the old ways of snack production, subscribe to our channel right away. Not only does it bring more videos like this to your screen, but it means you're officially part of the time-traveling snack squad. Oh, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss the next trip back.